The Woman in Sake project is back after a long silence. So this time I got to speak with Marina Giordano. She's a sake educator and TV director in Boston, and she's been doing amazing things with sake, including organizing World Sake Day East. So thank you, Marina.
So coming from, first of all, coming from TV, which is a very male-dominated industry, I already had that background, even in college. I was the first female director of our award show at school. You get the kind of side eye, like, oh, you're a woman trying to do what, But I sort of have taken on the stance of, I don't want to be labeled as, oh, she's the best female director. She's the best female sake educator. Let's take away that qualifier. And part of it isn't just male dominated, also being not Asian is a little bit like people look at you like, well, what could you possibly know about sake? And if you have the interest, you can learn it and you can do it. And I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
I think it's really important that we acknowledge and recognize women's accomplishments because we are opening up the world a little bit. But there's definitely still bias everywhere. And in sake, too.
Thank you again for your time today. I'm super excited. I see sake in your background.
Oh, yeah. There's sake everywhere in my house.
I love it. Right now, I'm in a former convent.
Oh, really? So sake?
Already had sake today.
Oh, okay. Good. It's still a little early here. Like, I've actually had a sip of sake just because I'm prepping class stuff, but it's only one. So it's a little early to drink too much.
How did you start working with sake in the first place?
Well, so first of all, I also work in television. So I direct TV. And my job will eventually go away. I'll become a space bar. So, because computer programming. Probably about 15 years ago, I started to panic. And I thought, well, what am I going to do when my job goes away completely? I don't have any life skills. And I loved working in TV. And what do I love as much as TV? And so I started studying wine. And I was in level 3 wine, and a friend introduced me to sake. And I was afraid of sake. I thought it was a spirit. I don't really love spirits. I'll drink them occasionally, but they're not my favorite. And I was never like somebody to do shooters and stuff like that. So I thought sake, like a lot of people, thought it was a spirit. I thought it was very strong. I thought it would be like burning alcohol. So I go, no, I don't want to try it. No. You have to try it. You have to. You'll love it. So I very cautiously took a sip and I went, wow. How is this made? How can this be made from rice? I went home from lunch that day and started Googling sake classes.
And this was in Boston the first time?
This is in Boston. Yep. And found a sake class and took it. And within 6 months, I was in Japan studying sake. And it was really good timing. It was right when WSET was bringing on the sake program. And so my educator got me into the program to become an educator for WSET. So I just sort of dove like head first in and I kind of haven't gone back. So I do still teach wine classes, but I primarily teach sake and I love it.
And when was this when you discovered sake?
So it would have been 2013 was when my first introduction to it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Long time ago.
So it's been about 10 years now of exploring sake and finding out more. And there's always so much to learn. You're never done learning. So
that's right. There's always so many mysteries.
Yes, exactly.
So when you started about 10 years ago, I'm assuming that, the sake scene is always changing. And I'm assuming that 10 years ago in Boston, it was completely different in terms of how sake is placed at the moment. So you were like the early pioneer of sake there.
Definitely. Yeah. It's not, it's still growing here. We're getting more and more sake in restaurants and in retailers. We're not at that point. There's some like mainstream restaurants that'll have sake, but not a lot. It's typically needs to be in a Japanese restaurant. So it's building. I also teach in San Francisco, and that helps. That market's a lot a lot more progressive than we are here, but people are opening up to it, and it's growing, so it's good. It's good. It's been very busy in trying to build a following in California, in Boston, primarily in Boston. California has a decent sake following, but Boston's a little. They're warming up, but they're taking their time.
Oh, good. But there's a sake brewery there as well, right?
It is, yeah. It just
Yeah.
opened. I guess he opened probably the beginning of the summer. I guess it's been a while now, but yeah. So he had been a part of a sake brewery a few years ago, and they shut down. And he just rebuilt, and he's doing a great job. He's really good sake. He has a tap room. It's lots of fun. He's been doing game nights and stuff like that. It's really exciting to have local sake.
Yes. And when you started, I mean, you were one of the first people, I'm assuming, who are sake educators, right? And like, what was the general response like? Because when you started, like you're saying that sake, probably a lot of people had no idea. It's like it looks like tequila or something like this. So, what was the initial response when you started teaching?
Mm, Well, even just in my closer group of like coworkers, even from TV, they're like, "You drink sake? It's so strong. How could you?" And so trying to break through those myths and barriers all the time is just continuous. It's like, no, it's actually it's closer to like a beer or wine. It's brewed, and just trying to educate people on what it actually is and introduce them. Or everyone's had that bad experience of either sake bombs or the hot
Exactly.
sake that got shot in your mouth, and it was like, oh no, that was horrible. I don't ever want to try that again. So trying to open people's mind to what you might have had might not have been good sake. And especially the beginning, it was hard to find good sake here. So, trying to get people to go to places where they could find it or direct them or bring sake to them, constantly like bring a little cup sake to somebody like, here, try this. Or bottle, here, try this one. Just getting people and, well, where can I get it? I'm like, well, you're probably going to have to order it online. But, and so now that we're getting retailers and we have a sake bar and more and more restaurants have sake in it. So it's a little bit
Yeah.
easier to say, oh, you can go here and you can go there.
Mm.
Really good.
Thanks to you.
Hopefully, like working on it.
Yeah, because you're organizing the Sake Day, World Sake Day celebrations and everything. But like 10 years ago when you started, was I mean, have you faced any kind of gender barriers in terms of like even in the wine world, when I speak with some people, it looks fairly equal, but then there could be some underlying
Yes,
biases. And I think we could say the same for the sake world as well. And have you
absolutely.
encountered any gender barriers or
Yeah. So coming from TV, which is a very male dominated industry, I already had that background even in college. I was the first female director of our award show at school. And so you just came from this very male dominated that you get the kind of side eye, like, oh, you're a woman trying to do what? But I sort of have taken on the stance of I don't want to be labeled as, oh, she's the best female director. She's the best female sake educator. You know, like let's take away that qualifier. I want to be the best sake educator that's
Yeah.
out there. I think it's really important that we acknowledge and recognize women's accomplishments because we are opening up the world a little bit. But there's definitely still bias everywhere. And in sake too, and part of it isn't just male dominated, also being not Asian is a little bit like people look at you like, well, what could you possibly know about sake? And if you have the interest, you can learn it and you can do it. And I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
I think it's really important that we support our women, whether they're the girls or the women coming up, that you can do whatever you want to do. Just set your mind to it, and don't think of it as this place has a barrier against me. You need to think that you're equal and you can do it. I think it's really important that we support them in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm so fascinated because you're actually also, so you have like, you're also directing TV news and you're a sake and wine educator. It's like you're wearing three hats.
Yeah, a little bit. It gets a little much. I work overnights too. So I work, which actually makes it easier to teach because I work from 3 a.m. to 11 a.m.
What?
So that
3
leaves me-
a.m.?
Yeah. So that because I work the morning newscast. So that leaves my evenings free, but it makes it like last night I taught. So, I'm normally in bed at 7 o'clock, but I'm up till like 10 instead. Which it makes it a little bit tough, but it's worth it. I really love working in TV, but I love teaching sake. So it's the balance of the two. I'm not quite ready
Yeah.
to give up TV, so I'll stay there for a while.
So fantastic. And so right now you're actually really doing both of them like fully.
Yep,
Wow.
absolutely. Yep.
And what is your focus on right now in terms of the sake
Sake.
side of things?
Yeah, so for sake right now, we're heading into this kind of a lull for me just these next month or so as we go into the holidays. As an educator, if I was actually in sales, it'd be a little bit different. This would be super busy time for me. But being on the education side, we sort of take a lull time. So I'm starting to plan my spring classes and summer classes. But there's also I'm doing a sake tour, a sakegura tour for my students. So we're helping to,
In Japan.
yeah, so hopefully in March,
Oh,
late February, March, we've got the plans are laid out. So as long as we can get the people who want to go, then we're good to go. And then, of course, Sake Day East, which you had mentioned earlier. So it's a consumer walk around tasting of sake. Um, we ran our second year this year. So we'll be on year 3 for 2023. It's about 200 people with over 50 sake.
wow.
Just a fun night of sake and food, and we had a Japanese potter there. We had cheese this year, so and we're looking to this year we did guided tastings and we did a special VIP hour. So just looking to continue to maintain what we've done and continue to grow it and build interest in it. So it's super exciting to have
Yeah.
over 200 people show up to a sake event in Boston. Is like
That's so true.
that happened.
And who are these people who show up and who are interested? Are they complete sake beginners or they already know and like sake? I'm so curious. What kind of
We've kind of had the range. So it's everything
Mm.
from people who have a pretty good knowledge of sake, maybe not
Mm.
formal knowledge, but have been tasting it all along. Or they really don't know what it is and they show up and seem to have a great time and get exposed and taste different sakes and learn more about sake. It's a learning event too. It's really based for consumers.
And how did you come up with the idea to do the celebrations? You said
Okay,
you started
so
in 2020, right?
yeah,
That wasn't it? Oh,
2021 was our first running of it.
Oh, okay, right after the
But
pandemic.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So,
Mm.
I've been going to the Sake Day in San Francisco for probably the last 6 or 7 years, which
Mhm.
is, um, they're the largest consumer tasting of sake outside of Japan, and I think this year they said they're actually the largest in the world. Over
Oh, wow,
1,000,
really? Oh,
yeah,
wow,
1,000
okay.
people 1,000 people, I don't even know how many sake, but
That's
after having
good.
gone
Oh,
to that and
mm,
experiencing it and being a part of it, usually have a booth there presenting my sake classes. I
mm.
thought we need this in Boston. We absolutely need this in Boston. So that was the first running of it. We weren't sure if it would work out here, if we'd had the same kind of response, but we've been thrilled. We've just really had it's been really well accepted and great response from both industry people and the consumers. So it's exciting to do it here. So we'll do it
That's
soon.
good.
Be September 23rd next year. So September 23rd of 23. So
Oh, okay, so you actually have it before the World Second Day. Oh,
yes.
fantastic. No, I
Yeah.
want to
And then we
go.
can also go to San Francisco or people can come to us and go there. So
So you can
yeah,
be celebrating the
the whole week.
whole week or whole month.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow. And what's your kind of long-term plan? Like in 10 years,
Yeah.
where I know it's a long way away, but
Yeah, it is. It is. Um, well, it's a little difficult because I'll be getting close to retirement time from TV, so then I start to think, well, once I retire from TV, can I expand what I'm doing for teaching? Because I think I'd still like to teach. So, looking towards trying to build my own education program for students, and continuing with Saki Day, like that's an important thing for me is really trying to build that and create a larger, even if we could be as big as San Francisco, that would be awesome. It'd be really fun. So just continuing to build and to get people to drink sake. Like it started out like getting people to drink sake. So we had better sake here in Boston. And that's just like the long-term goal is just keep people drinking sake. It makes them happy. It's like, so it's such a great buzz. It's a fun drink. It's interesting. It's fascinating. It's subtle. It's nuanced. It's completely different, whatever you're tasting. And so it's just exciting to watch people discover it that way.
Absolutely. And I'm sure if I go to your class, everybody who goes to your class would love end up loving sake.
I hope so.
And you, in terms of, for example, in your class, so once they come to your class and what happens afterwards for them? They
Well,
also, Mhm.
yeah, it all depends on, some people, because I teach basic classes, I teach like consumer introductory classes, I teach the certification classes and the advanced certification.
All
And so it
right.
kind of depends on where they're coming from and what they're looking to do. A lot of times, I get somebody in a consumer class that just wants to know a little bit more to understand what it is. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I need to find out more. And, next thing you know, they're in the certification class and then they're in the advanced class and they're just a consumer. They're just an enthusiast of sake.
Yeah, and
That happens a lot. That happens a lot. I find people who come back to me later and like, what else can I take? What other classes are out there? So it's great that there is, there's multiple certifications, Saki Scholar and John Gauntner's classes and WSET, and there's the JSA diploma. It's fun to have students come to me like, oh, you took the JSA diploma. What's it like? I'm going to study for it. And you think, oh, you're crazy. Do it because it was great. But, and they really just had an interest. So it's really interesting to see them grow, and it's exciting to watch people
yes.
develop a love for sake, So I hope I
Mm.
inspired that.
Yeah, you're inspiring me. Are they mainly like in terms of nationality or gender? Is there like a certain profile who come to you who are attracted to you, or it's just a complete mix?
It's been a mix across the board. It's it started out, primarily at least people in the industry. I'd get like 75% was people in the industry, maybe 25 were consumers. But I'd say now we're at least 50-50, if not more consumers. And then gender, this last class I had was like, it was half men and half women. The one I have now is all men. It kind of goes back and forth, and it depends on if I'm here or in San Francisco. I have everything from Japanese to Chinese to Mexican to like kind of everywhere. And I think a little bit of that too is the availability of the classes. There's only certain places they're offered in the US, the WCT classes at least. And during the pandemic, a lot of people weren't offering them at all. We continued to do them over Zoom here. And
Yeah.
now we just started fully in person again. We're doing Zoom too because you have a lot of people who just aren't ready still, or they live at my last class. I had somebody from Nebraska. There's no WSET sake classes in Nebraska. She hardly
Right.
had sake in Nebraska. So, I've also got those people who are just further away from someone who could teach them. It's a huge variety of people. Yeah.
Wow. So you're really reaching like everybody.
Yep. Trying to. Also, everybody, like everywhere. Who cares? Just
And
learn more.
And earlier, when you mentioned that in terms of like the two things about gender, and you also mentioned that since you're not so-called Asian, how did you like internally overcome those issues?
Oh, I think
Well,
that
I mean,
was
if you want to, only
well,
if you want.
I think that, because because it is something you think to yourself, like, well, people put that doubt in your head because it's like you can see the look on someone's face when they're like, well, how would you know about sake? You're not only are you a woman, but you're definitely not Japanese. So it sort of, I think for me, it manifests into that collection of, well, okay, so I need to take the JSS Sake Social Academy, and I need to do John Gauntner's classes, and I need to do the Sake Scholar class, and what else can I know? Oh, let me do the JSA diploma too. It's a love of learning, but there's also this idea of you need to validate yourself. And then at some point in time, you sort of start to get past that, and you go, Actually, I am just as knowledgeable as these other people. It's okay. I know what I'm talking about, and I really have a passion for it. I think that's more important is having the passion that makes you want to learn. So, when I'm not in a class actively learning myself, I'm out there trying to look through, well, what can I find that's new? What's coming out that's trends in sake, or what's new things that they're doing? What are they doing for yeast or polishing or rices, or talking to the local brewer here. What is he doing? Like, how are you making sake? So, I think it's after a point in time, you figure out, okay, wait, you feel confident in yourself, and it just takes
Yeah,
that little bit
right.
of time. So it can be hard, but it's like with anything else, when you start something new, you're a little apprehensive. And even if you think you know what you're doing, you're still not as confident as you feel you should be. It doesn't help when
Yeah.
people are kind of looking at you sideways. So,
That's so true. And then you're at meantime, the whole time when you were doing this, you were also still the whole time working in television as well. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and you're covering news. You're coving news in general or not sake specific
No,
or just
no. Oh, I wish. I don't
so
actually.
fun.
Yes, I would love to have a sake show. It would be cool. Boston's not quite ready for that. But I have, and so I've been working at a local. It's one of the local news stations.
Mm.
Since I graduated from college, so I've been there. This is my 29th year.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, I've been directing for more than 20. And so I direct local news. So it's the fires, the car crashes,
Yeah.
and the very nice things that are happening in Boston. Sometimes there's good stuff happening. But yeah, so it's
Like the opening of a sake brewery.
what's that? Yes, we didn't cover the sake brewery. We should have, but we did our style. But like the next snowstorm, I'll be on all day with the snowstorm and stuff like that. So it's
Mm.
local weather, sports, things like that. Yeah.
Wow. It's so fabulous how you can have like you're kind of in charge of all your passion in a way that you want to have it. So that's so great.
It's important because you do this every day. Like it's
True.
something I told my children, I don't really care what you decide to do for a career, but
Mhm.
pick something you like because you're going to do it every day.
That's
And
true.
so you really have to enjoy it. And
Has to be fun.
when you work at 3 a.m., you have to want to get up to do that thing. It's kind of hard to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to work at 3 a.m.
Oh yeah, no, forget 3 a.m. Even 6 a.m. is hard.
Right? So you gotta love what you do. And so that was a big part of when I started to think if I can't still do that was I didn't want to become a space bar. That wasn't what I did. I could still direct, but it wasn't directing the way I learned it. So that's why I really panicked and went, I need to find something else that I really love. And so, wine took me that way. And as I started to learn more and more about wine and got my diploma in wine and then got exposed to sake, it was like, this is it. And I've kind of, like I said, I still teach wine, but I so prefer to teach sake. It's so much more fun.
And you also, because I'm assuming by having, all your credentials in wine, that's actually a really strong advantage also to convert wine lovers because you know what you're talking about in wine. And you can refer to wine as well.
It
Yeah.
does. It helps to make the transition for them too when
Mm.
they're kind of stuck on sake and like don't quite get certain aspects of it. It's sometimes hard to convert wine drinkers because it's a different taste profile. It can be similar to wine, but much lower acidity. There can always be a little bit of sweetness to sake, and so wine drinkers are always a little like, oh. But once they get into it, they start examining it a little closer. I think it's easier for them to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah. And are you planning to get into other alcoholic beverage as well, like Mexican tequila or Japanese shochu, for example?
Probably. So with doing the JSS Academy, I was exposed to shochu, and
Yeah.
I have a bunch in my liquor cabinet. I don't drink it as much as it's a confusing product. It's a tough one that trying to even though I've gone through because in JSA diploma you learn about it too.
Mm.
But serving temperatures and just things like that get a little like, ugh. So I do taste it from time to time. It's one that I want to spend more time with. Tequila is one of my favorites, though, for spirits. And I'm not a huge spirit drinker, but tequila, as it's like that'll be, especially in summertime. I love a margarita or just tequila and lime. Even add some soda water just on a weeknight, lighten it up a little bit. But just with diploma from wine, I studied all the spirits, and I did my diploma when spirits was still in the WSET diploma. So, I love sparkling wines too. I'm a sucker for sparkling wines.
Of
Um,
course.
I do drink like everything pretty much except for beer. I'm not a huge
Mm.
beer. Just
Oh, the only beer I like is Guinness. Oh, I'm so happy and excited to talk to you, Marina, at last. And thank you for your time and energy today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to finally meet you on Zoom at least, and hopefully meet you
Yeah.
at some point. I hope.
Next time in Japan or in
Yeah.
Boston or Spain
Or
or
San
wherever.
Francisco or somewhere. Anywhere.
Absolutely. Well,
Excellent.
thank you again, Marina.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so fun.
I'm so happy to speak
Me
with you.
too. It was so good to talk with you.